What is up, people of the internet? Welcome back to another episode of Learning with Belvista Studios. I got a guest today. Her name's Cindy. What is up, Cindy? Welcome to Learning with Belvista Studios.
Hello, thank you for having me, Kim. I'm excited.
I'm excited to have you. So how this came about was I'm trying to learn more about diversity and inclusion. I want to educate myself because when we design courses around it, I only know what I know. So I'm trying to challenge my thinking and so that I can help serve my learners better. Did some Googling, saw that you had a course that you offered to organizations around diversity and inclusion, things for managers to do, and that. I was like, let's go then. Let's have a
Okay.
conversation. So you got a course for organizations. When you developed that course, what specific business problem were you trying to solve from the diversity and inclusion perspective?
Right. So I guess the main issue is we developed the course after the murder of George Floyd. One of our partners came to us and said, you know what, this is a good course to develop. There's just a lot going on in the United States as far as a need for more diversity and inclusion in organizations. And just basically just period in every facet of the government from top to bottom. It's not just in the organizations. And I was like, yeah, this is true. So that was the thinking behind it, to create a course that people didn't have to go out, looking for. A lot of calls we got were from organizations or for people who work in organizations going, do you have a course that's already, created? This is not something that was already out there. People were looking for something that they could give to their workforce, to their managers, to kind of spark a conversation on things that were going on, but to also come up with a plan and to be able to define, terms like diversity and inclusion. That's a lot of what the course, that's what the course talks about. It gets into what is diversity, what is inclusion, why do we need these things? Basically coming up with a plan for your workforce to make sure that it is inclusive. So
It's a pretty big stimulus or initiator to create something.
Yeah, it is. It is. I would before then, my company, Digital Artifacts, we create custom curriculum just for organizations, and we had never kind of delved into that type of course. And honestly, we had never had any requests for that type of course either. Until, that was kind of like the catalyst. We started getting all these phone calls and all these companies started wanting to, do something, for their organization. But to be honest, that was kind of short-lived.
What do you mean by that? Tell me more.
It was, I like the fact that people wanted to, after that incident, there was a lot of talking about, changing the mindset and, changing how organizations are going to work. And I'm laughing because I kept seeing so many commercials and on LinkedIn, I kept seeing so many posts about, our company is going to change. And I'm like, well, how are you going to change? Can I get a bullet list? Can I get a PDF? Can I get something instead of a bunch of buzzwords about how you're going to change? But other than that, it's after a few months past that incident, even though there was more, issues, more incidents than there always will be, unfortunately, it just kind of died down. I really think that a lot of companies were kind of feeling the heat. A lot of organizations, a lot of individuals were feeling the heat, and people wanted to jump in and say something because it was a very hot topic. And then it was hot until it wasn't. And that's something that I see quite often. So I really didn't pay it much attention because I knew that within a few months, this was going to die down, because this is not the first time that things like this is happening here. You know, you have, I mean, I'm not going to list all the other incidents, just, you know, just watch the news. So, and that's usually the reaction. You know, let's do something. Let's say something to our workforce. Let's make a statement. And then, you know, within like a few weeks, it's kind of like, oh, well, we did that. And then things go back to normal.
So it sounds like the organizations were just reacting, didn't really care. And, you know, it wasn't tied to some change in mindset or bias or any, there was no metrics behind them initiating this training to actually prove that they care. And
No,
then
I think
think
that it was
about
just a
a plan
reaction.
moving forward.
No, I think it was just like a really gut reaction to something bad that really happened, and people were really angry about it. And there was some legitimate concerns. I'm sure there was organizations, and there's still organizations and people who are legitimately concerned. But then there was just a lot of people who were just, you know, I don't mind saying it, I feel like we're just taking advantage of a moment to, you know, come out and, you know, and probably win some brownie points and talk about how diverse and inclusive their organization is, or individuals who are like, oh, you know, we really believe in X, Y, and Z. And I pretty much just kind of sat back to see how far it would go. And it went about as far as I thought it would, a few months. You know, and then it kind of, you know, fizzled out. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, possibly another incident will happen that will spark, you know, spark interest again. And, you know, people will, you know, want to talk about diversity, inclusion, and making changes. And then, you know, a few months after that incident, you know, things have pretty much go back to normal.
Mm. Okay, well, let's use this as an opportunity to kind of shift perspective and maybe shine some light on how people think about diversity and inclusion. And I guess to do that, I'd like to start with, how did you define diversity and inclusion? Or how do you define it now?
Well, for me, you know, diversity um, is hiring or bringing people into your organization, you know, who don't just look like you, right? Who don't just look like the person running your HR department. You know, that can't be diverse. I'll give you an example. I worked for a company, I won't name that company, at one point, and me and the manager and myself were, you know, going through resumes. Um, and he's white, and we were going through resumes, and we were looking for another instructional designer. And when we were going through the resumes, he was going through them and looking at them and reading names. And if he couldn't pronounce the name, or if the name sounded too ethnic, you know, he would be like, nope, nope, you know, and he would go into like the no pal. It was very, I'm looking at him like, do you want to actually look at the resume before you say no to it? So that's definitely not diversity and inclusion. So, you know, diversity, you know, we want people in our organizations who represent, you know, all ethnicities, and who, like I said, just don't look like us, whether that's black or white or whatever it may be. And as far as inclusion, we have to realize that everybody does not share our beliefs. It doesn't share our religious beliefs. You know, they don't share, you know, our worldview, and they still need to be included in the conversation. We still need to treat them right, you know, and make sure that they know that they are a needed and important part of the organization. You know, we don't want to, you know, people to feel isolated. And I think that I've worked at a lot of companies, or worked for a number of companies, where I felt like people did feel isolated. They were almost siloed in groups with, or segregated in groups where they felt like they were safe, and they were not really kind of invited to the party per se. And that's something that we definitely need to get away from.
Mm. So some of the, it's interesting to know the consequences of, you know, when we don't have a diverse organization or if we don't include people. So you've said like isolation, safety. Is there any other kind of consequences of not having a diverse or inclusive organizational culture or behaviors within that organization?
Well, I think that the main thing is that it's really a tax on the people who work there. Um, I can't speak for a lot of, upper management. I don't know if they, if I don't know if a lot of, companies get it or not. Of course, there's always the bottom line, right? There's the return on investment. Companies that are diverse and inclusive, they see, this brand loyalty into that, in that, they turn around, they see their stocks go up, they see more people want to buy their products because it's kind of like an invitation. It's like, you know we're diverse, we're inclusive, we want everyone to wear our product, or to to come into our company. We have like this open door policy where everyone is going to be treated the same. But for employees, it's a little more granular because you go to work and you're happy to be there. You feel like you're included. You feel like you're a part of the team, and not just someone to come in and clock in from 9 to 5, do their job, and go home, and no one thinks about you again. So
That's interesting. So you wanted your initiative to spark a conversation. What kind of things do you think, how did you achieve that?
well, I wanted to put something out there, that people they didn't have any excuse that they could use that they couldn't find something. There's not there's probably a plenty of diversity and inclusive courses, but at the same time, or D&I courses, but at the same time, they're usually ILT. And then dealing with a pandemic, people didn't really have that option for people to come in and to do a 2-day, 3-day class with their workforce. Those are usually how those classes are set up. So we wanted to create, or we did create, a digital solution. So that kind of rips away at least one excuse for not having a D&I course. It's because it's available to everybody. It's self-paced, and you can get out there. Managers can take it. Um, Everyone can take the course, and learn something from it, and hopefully take something from it and just be better people, and create like a better workforce, and a better organization.
Yeah, that's cool. What I'd love to know your process. This a little bit, it's more instructional design, but going from a 2 to 3 day instructor-led training course to an e-learning, which is probably condensed time. How did you identify the things from the face-to-face that should go into the e-learning? Like, how do you prioritize?
Okay, well, actually, we pretty much put the course ended up being pretty much the same. So, of course, you cannot use all of the same activities. So, we spend a lot of time looking at the in person activities and saying, okay, how can we turn these into virtual activities? How can we don't want to lose what made these activities special. We don't want to lose that engagement. So we spend a lot of time creating what we feel to be is really engaging activities to go into an e-learning where people still had to, that made people think, that question whether that if they were being diverse, if they were being inclusive. It made them kind of like reflect on themselves, and then also reflect on their organization. And there was, for one example, there's an activity where at the start of the course, we ask, on a scale of, 1 to 5, how diverse is your company? How inclusive is your company? And then we just kind of shine a light on you and say, well, how, inclusive do you feel like you are? and we ask this at the beginning and kind of get people's feedback on how they feel before they take the course. And then as they go through the course, we're still asking them more questions. We're asking them, to type in information. And as they give the course, feed information into the course, they get feedback. So it helps them, hopefully it helps them to kind of think. And at the end, we ask them again, to take the same, survey to answer the same questions and see if the answers have changed.
Mm. Was there any activities that you talk about that special kind of element of them in the face-to-face? Was there any that you had to present differently in the e-learning? Because I don't know, you couldn't do a role play or something, or you couldn't do a conversation.
Yeah.
And how did you determine how to do that?
We had to redo all of them,
Mm.
because of course we were again thinking about, the pandemic, which unfortunately we're still in. But we didn't want to take away again what made those activities special. So there's a lot of role playing. There's a lot of scenarios. I would say that is probably 50% role playing and scenarios, because we want you to actually go through these experiences. And we rewrote and updated the experiences to make them, more realistic for today's time, like things that people are really going through. So we rewrote a lot of the activities, so they're up to date, and we wanted you to go through it and really see how you feel. And there's a lot of branching and gaming where, you pick your role, or you pick your character, and then you go through these scenarios and you go through these role playing scenarios and games, and see how you fare.
That's cool. What did you build it in?
We built it in Storyline.
Yeah, nice. So you're still getting the emotional impact that learners would have in the face-to-face, but you're recreating that emotional impact by having them do actions and decisions in the e-learning. So they're still experiencing it. That's cool. Nice work.
Yeah, and I think that I believe that it turned out really well. And I think that the best part about it is that, again, that it kind of shines a light on you personally, to make you think, and there's a lot of different situations that people go through in the workplace that never even get mentioned. So we wanted some real life scenarios, things that really happen to people. So I actually even, polled, people and asked, tell me some things that have happened to you, in your workplace, that you felt like you were not included. Did you feel like there was a problem with, D&I? And I got a lot of responses back from, people I knew and from people that I didn't know. So it was kind of like to start off doing a focus group and getting that information. And I got a lot of really good scenarios that we were able to put in there that, that actually happen to people on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's cool. I think stats are a good way, especially like for those topics where people are like, that doesn't happen here, or that would never happen to me. Like we do a student protection one where it's like child abuse and child neglect, and 1 in 3 kids, and you're just like, what? Like literally that lower number. So I think sometimes calling out through stats and bringing that reality to the person can be really impactful, because a lot of the time we just think it happens over there and not in our immediate vicinity. So that's cool.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of the scenarios that I see in courses don't really, it's not like they don't happen, but I feel like they're not realistic. So we wanted everything to be really realistic in the course. So people could not say, okay, this is not something that I haven't seen. A lot of people, took it or piloted and were like, oh, geez, we have seen this happen. We just didn't, say anything about it, or we didn't think anything about it, because racism can be subtle. You know, there's things that you could be doing that you don't realize that you're doing, or there's things that could be happening around you that you don't realize are happening around you. Um, and then when you do realize, you don't really know what to do. You know, do you keep it to yourself? Do you go to a manager? You know, so we talk about those things. And then we also, you know, look at the manager and look at upper management, and, you know, and ask them, you know, what do you do when people come to you? You know, and how do you stop these things from happening? And then we help them to devise a plan. You know, next steps, you have to have a plan. You can't just, you know, say, hey, you know, go to HR. Like, it, you can, but HR has to have a plan. So there's a lot of different layers in the course for a lot of different individuals. Um, you know, whether it's management or HR, it's like, okay, this is what you should be looking for. This is what you should be doing next. And everybody's plan is not going to be the same, but it does help you come up with an individual plan for your organization.
That's cool. So you almost provide them with a framework to adapt for their context. Is that what it is?
Yes, because every organization is going to be different, and you know, some organizations have large HR departments, and you know, and some don't, and some managers are not personally, you know, or feel like they're not personally equipped to handle those issues as they come up, and a lot of managers are uncomfortable with handling those issues as they come up. So it's about, you know, being aware of what's going on around you and being able to fix it as well as you can. But, you know, the first part of fixing anything is sitting down and coming up with a plan for next steps. So I think that's something that the course does very well.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. And then also, like, that's the important when they think it, when you think about the 70-20-10 model, you know, the 10% is your template or your framework for managers and leaders. But then it's like what happens after the training. And I love that you're now bringing it into the workplace, and you're like, devise a plan, create a plan, and make it happen within the workplace, because that's the 70% of things. Like, we need to have it on the job experience. Go apply. You know, you feel uncomfortable having this conversation, go try it out and help improve. And then, yeah, you might not get it right the first time, but reflect and try again. That's cool. So
Yeah,
learning
and then
doesn't stop in the formal e-learning that you might create.
yeah, and there's things like, you know, templates, and there's things like checklists, you know, that you can download from the course to help you get started, because it's not, you know, going to be all inclusive. I'm sorry, as far as the checklist and these templates, because they know their organization better than we do, but it gives them a framework to start with.
Cool. What are some of those you mentioned, like behaviors or that are racist, like subtly racist? Can you call out some of them now? And let's think of, I'd like to take it somewhere, but call them out first.
Oh, geez. So things that are subtly racist. Again, kind of one of the examples I gave you earlier. You know, when it comes to, you know, names, um, you know, that was, I don't even know if that was even subtle, but it definitely was wrong. Um, I think that other things, jokes, people don't realize, you know, sometimes they're telling, you know, jokes that seem funny to them, but aren't funny to the person who they're telling them to, especially when they have to do with race or religion. And I feel like a lot of people don't feel like they're being mean. But you know, you kind of are, you know, and no one wants their race or religion, you know, to be made fun of, not even, you know, subtly. So there's things like that. Um, um, I've heard so many, you know, comments working in diverse organizations, where, you know, that honestly just kind of make me cringe, like, you know, where people would say, oh, well, you know, you, uh, what is, like, okay, for example, I heard like one person say to another person who was of another ethnicity. They were like, you know what, you don't, you know, sound the way, you know, others like in your race sound. Or, you know, me growing up, I used to hear all the time that I sounded white, you know, or, and I'm like, what is that? What is that? What is, how do you sound white? You know, just really strange things like that, that people would think were actually a compliment. And I'm like, that's not really a compliment, you know.
Mm,
Or when, for Black women, you know, we get these subtle like comments, you know, about our hair. I've had people at work, you know, ask me, can I touch your hair? And I'm like, no, hard no. Like, why do you want to touch my hair? It feels just like yours. You know, touch your own head, and, you know, and then just imagine that it's me. It's things like that that they don't realize are not, are no-nos, you know,
mm,
because it seems like it's harmless. Um, and it's not the biggest thing in the world, but it does make people feel uncomfortable, and it makes people feel like, okay, that they're being singled out, you know, for you know, for their differences. It's like, why are you singling me out? Um,
mm.
so just small things like that. We go into like a ton of things, but you know, over here, you're in Australia, right?
Yeah.
Over here, we've been going through in America a lot of changes. You know, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if you just seen things on the news. Like, it's so much going on. You know, people are. I would say a lot of people are finding themselves and finding their voice, and you know, trying to be more of their authentic self and not really have to hide it. Again, one of the examples I just gave you was about, you know, Black women, you know, in their hair. You know, like there's this natural hair movement, you know, in America where, you know, Black women are, you know, wearing their hair in different ways. And sometimes that is offensive to people. Or, you know, they make comments about, oh, well, you look better if your hair was like this, or you would look better if your hair was straight instead of curly, or, you know, maybe that very, you know, nice afro isn't businesslike. But you know, really, who are you to say that someone's hair isn't businesslike? What's businesslike hair? I mean, I think we can all agree that people should be, depending on where you work, you know, there are dress codes and their standards, but your dress codes should not alienate a certain race or a certain group, or you know, call them out and use their culture against them. And that's something that the course also talks about. So,
Mm. Thank you for sharing those as stimulus. Um, and also just bringing awareness to them. So what I would like to understand is if those are behaviors that, you know, exclude people, are racist, all of these things, and we're trying to train away from doing that, how do you train that? Because I think, you know, that if I think about it, it's just like people not thinking about what they're saying, for example, they're caught up in the moment. Maybe they're feeling awkward themselves and they're trying to, like you said, they're trying to compliment the other person, but they don't know how it's received. So, how do you train to stop or change people's thinking around that, change the behavior?
well, the first thing you have to do is let people know that what they're doing is unacceptable behavior. I mean, I feel like a lot of people don't even know.
Mm,
Maybe they've been doing it for so long, or they've heard other people do it, that they don't even realize that they're doing something wrong themselves. So that's where a lot of the scenarios, you know, came into play. So they can see that these subtle things that maybe that they do, that they've seen others do, are, you know, not great. you know, and probably shouldn't be doing them. So, you know, giving them examples of things that, you know, range the gamut. We don't want to, you know, start with large, you know, examples where everybody knows that, yeah, you probably should not be doing that. We want to like really kind of like focus in on the small things that people do that they don't even realize. So once people realize that they're doing something wrong, then you can get into kind of changing their behavior, changing, you know, how they think about it. And another part of that is in the scenarios is letting them have this dialogue with the other person, letting them know how they feel. Because I feel that people are inherently good, you know, and if they feel like they're hurting someone's feelings or they're being mean to someone and they don't know, I feel if they do know, if it's called out, and you don't want to call it out to the point where, you know, they feel bad, right? You don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But if you make them aware, then of how the other person is feeling, make them aware of what they're doing, make them aware of how it makes the other person feel. I feel like then you're on a course to change someone's behavior if they want to change. You know, a lot of it is, you know, skill versus will. It's like, do you really you want to change? And if you want to change, then you take that information. Um, you don't feel attacked. You know, you don't turn it around on yourself, and you go forward, you know, with a different mindset. But that's just kind of like part of it. You really have to practice these things and be conscious. I feel like the biggest thing is giving people examples and letting them know how the other person feels, having those conversations, constantly having those conversations. So, you know, I want everybody to buy our D&I course, but this D&I course is not going to solve, you know, diversity and inclusion problems at your organization as a whole. That's why you have to have a plan. You don't want to, you have to keep going with it. You know, you have to keep doing things that that bring people together. It's a work in progress. You know, people have to get used to or get unused to like their behavior. If you're doing something wrong, it's kind of like with a baby, right? You know, you tell a baby, you know, don't touch this, and they keep touching it, and next thing you know, they burn their little hands or hurt their little hands, and they stop. So there has to be some kind of like consequence if like the poor behavior does not stop. But again, I believe that people are inherently good. So you tell them what they're doing. I don't feel like you should just jump down someone's throat and say you're a bad person because you did this. No, you let them know, and maybe they're not even aware. And then once they hear how the other person feels, a lot of them are they're cringed. They're like, I didn't even know that it made you feel that way, and they're sorry and they're apologetic. But one time is not going to just do it, right? Something that you've been doing for 20 years is not going to be changed with one e-learning course or a 2-day instructor-led course. So you're going to have to continue. That's what the plan is for. You're going to have to create a plan where people, you know, can get on the right track, but they can stay on the right track. And then you want to constantly bring people together, you know, not to make people you know, uncomfortable, but that's the whole part of inclusion, you know, to bring people of different races and ethnicities and different cultures together. You know, that's the inclusion part. So you want to do that. And there's a number of ways that you can do that. There's a number of ways that organizations can do that. And I've been at a lot of organizations who had a great culture, and they were really successful at doing that, and everybody felt like they were, you know, a family. And there's some organizations that don't do it so well.
Okay, tell us about the good ones so that people can start implementing that stuff.
Okay, so I I worked for a company many moons ago, and I'm going to bring them up because I know there's a lot of people on LinkedIn, and the company doesn't. I don't think the company exists anymore, but it was a company called CBion, and it was a telecommunications company, and they were always having some type of event that included, everyone. Of course, you're not going to have an event that doesn't include everyone, but they were really good about, making employees aware of the event and giving employees time to actually go to the event. It would be like a Friday at 2 o'clock and they're like, stop what you're doing. Everybody come to the courtyard and, and see someone and mingle. And they would have events after work. So they did a great job with teamwork and team building, and the teams were diverse. You would walk into any department and you would see, it's kind of like the United Nations. It was nice to see all these different, people and cultures, working together. So it was from the top, top down. So it was the hiring process, right? Not to hire, just all Black people in this one group or white people in this one group, but they made sure that the departments were diverse. And then they made sure that, people had a chance to meet each other who would not meet each other. Maybe this department had no business working with this department, or they didn't work with this department, but they still had these events to make sure that people did get together so they could see each other, so they can meet each other inside of work, outside of work, and foster these friendships, these relationships, get these conversations started. And it really was like a big family. When I first started, it was almost cultish how, how everyone there liked each other. It was crazy. And now the company, although it does not exist in its old form, I think that it was bought out. They still have Facebook groups, and people who worked for this company still get together. There's probably like thousands of people in like their Facebook groups, and they still get together. And I know I have friends who used to work there who still get together with like a ton of their other friends who still got together. So the company did a great job bringing people together. And even after the company was kind of defunct, those people stayed together and they still talk and they still communicate and they're still friends and they still, help each other. So I think that they did it right as far as culture. They had the right mindset.
That's really cool. I think a lot of times when any training thing comes in, they always talk about, it needs to be driven from the top down. But I think there is a responsibility of each individual as well. Like, we're all humans. Do you have any tips of what each individual, regardless of your role in the hierarchy or your place within the business, what tip should a person be to just be a self-leader with all this?
I love diversity. I love other cultures. I am a me and my son, we sit at home and we watch anime all day long. I am working on 4 different languages. I speak 3 pretty fluently. So I think that you just have to want to get out of your bubble and get to know people, right? And appreciate other cultures, right? And appreciate the differences, between you. I mean, that's what really makes people special. I'm an introvert. People would not think that, but I'm almost an extreme introvert. So it actually, takes me, a minute to get out of my bubble or stop thinking about myself long enough to, go and introduce myself to people. And it's not because, I'm rude. It's just because I'm always in the zone. It's some zone. There's always some work that has to be done. But I feel like you have to want to get to know people, that you want to, that you have to have an appreciation for other cultures. And the world is such a melting pot. I mean, just kind of like look around you. It's insane. We already, enjoy, different foods, right? We already, enjoy like different types of movies. So it's like, okay, you take that gusto that you have for just those small things and just appreciate, you know, the culture, you know, that brought it forth, you know. Get to know people, get out of your bubble. It's the world would be a really lonely place if people just kind of stayed off to themselves and didn't want to, you know, intermingle or meet others. The world's too big. The world's too big. You have to appreciate it. I love traveling. That's the worst thing for this pandemic for me, is that I haven't been able to travel and go to all these other places. And you know, all of my tutors, you know, I love talking to them weekly and finding out what's going on in the world. And I think that you really just have to want to. I mean, that's the biggest thing. There's certain people who just don't want to. They want to kind of sit in their bubble and they don't really want to be bothered with anyone else. And I guess you can't force them, you know, but they're missing out.
I like that message a lot. One other question I have is, so I imagine because people were reacting to what was going on, and they were like, whoa, we need diversity and inclusion course. So then it naturally probably gets shoved at the staff. They're not like self-enrolling, I'm assuming. How do you market or frame the language of the course to get people to care? So they're not just going, oh, I need to do this, so I get marked complete and my boss gets off my back.
Well, you know what? That's really an HR thing. You have to make your employees, it's when I say make, I don't mean, you know, force, you know, definitely you can't force someone to care, but they have to reinforce the importance of diversity and inclusion at their organizations, and that it's not just a fad. You know, that we're not just doing it because this incident happened, and if you take this, you check a box and now you are diverse and we are inclusive, and we can all go home and not think about this until the next thing happens. Or we're not just doing this to make our stockholders happy, or we're not just doing this so we can go on Twitter and say that we did it. You have to really kind of speak to your workforce, speak to your organization, and make them realize the importance of this, and hold everybody accountable. Everybody should be held accountable to do this. You know, look, I'm the person who cheats at e-learning courses. You know, I hate when I have to create an e-learning course that, you know, people, we lock it down. So you have to watch the videos and you have to go through everything, because if there's a loophole in your course, I will find it and I will get out of that course within 5 minutes. I will be done. I will, you know, memorize the answers. I'm the worst student, you know, but you have to make people care. And I feel like that starts with not just throwing a course at them, is the conversation about why they're taking the course in the first place. You know, companies have town halls about everything else. Why not have a town hall about diversity and inclusion? Why not have a town hall about current events? Where, you know, you speak to, you know, what's going on, how it's affecting the organization, how it could affect the organization, how people in your organization feel about it. You know, just because it didn't happen at your organization doesn't mean that people aren't affected by it or they're not sad about it. So have those conversations. You know, it could start off with something as small as a memo, you know, to your organization. It's like, we recognize that this happened, and we recognize how some of you may feel about it. You know, and if you want to talk to us, you know, come to HR. But the organization has to want to start that conversation and make sure that the course is taken and is not taken just to check a box. You know, like I said, that's what really kind of bothered me about all the talk. Not that it wasn't helpful, is that it went away fairly quickly. It was like, okay, the incident is 3 months old, or incident is this much old, and it goes away. And over the past few years, we've just seen a lot of that, where something happens and there's like this immediate outrage and people are outraged and the media is talking about it ad nauseum and nothing changes. And then everybody just kind of goes off to their corner. You have to keep the conversation out there. You have to keep it going. And that's up for organizations to do. You know, we help them create a plan to keep those things going. You don't have to beat people about the head, but there's always a reason to get people together and to keep those conversations going.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, Cindy, I'm going to summarize my key takeaways for the audience, but I'd love the audience that are watching or listening to chuck them in the comments as well. So number one, if you're designing a course on diversity or inclusion or anything that is like a transferable kind of behavior change that you're trying to achieve, is build awareness, then give tips on things people can do differently, and consider like the impact, for example, the impact that your behavior is having or maybe perceived by another person. And then the third thing is where to get help. So speak to a manager, go to this intranet site, or call this number. And then the last thing that I would love to reinforce, which I loved, was when it comes to diversity and inclusion, for you to be a self-leader and to actually do something different is to be curious about the other human beings around you and to find appreciation for them.
Yeah,
So Cindy,
go talk to someone.
Yeah,
Go talk to someone.
Exactly. And be curious. Just be curious. It makes it way easier. Then you don't need to be the person talking. You can just listen, ask questions. It's way more comfortable. So thank you, Cindy, for such a tangible and practical episode of Learning with Belvista Studios. I think you've given lots of ideas from, you know, what managers can implement to organizations, to individuals, how people can think about like extracting those scenarios and that data to drive and create their courses. So I appreciate the knowledge that you have shared. And in the description will be a link to Cindy's LinkedIn profile and her website, so you can go check her out. And please, I'll just communicate now, share this so we can share awareness on this topic. Like Cindy's saying, like it shouldn't stop with just listening here. What are you going to do about it? So take action, folks.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I think that this was I love the opportunity to be able to come to talk about this, because honestly it's just been bothering me for months. But and I appreciate you like taking this time to kind of shine a light. It's these things that help, that keep the conversation going.
Cool. Well, thank you. You listeners need to keep it going, because we've done our bit. We're going to stop. No, I'm only messing. We'll go do stuff as well after this, but you also need things. Thank you for watching and listening, Learning with Belvista Studios. We appreciate it.
All right, bye.
Bye.